So this is me reading out my thoughts on episode 1 of season 5 of Homeland. The episode was called Separation Anxiety. I hadn't read many spoilers before watching this episode because I had taken a bit of a break from Homeland during the hiatus. A lot of the speculation on Tumblr was getting a little bit tedious, thinking about who Carrie's new boyfriend would be and the endless arguments about Carrie, Quinn and all that sort of stuff was getting old fast. So coming to this season, I sort of was approaching it with a new perspective and a fresh set of eyes. So I thought it was an interesting start to the first episode. The quick overview is that it's been 2 years after season 4 ended. Carrie's living in Berlin, Germany. She's quit the CIA, although she still has her US security clearance for reasons unknown. Not sure about the US, but in Australia, for a security clearance, you have them if they're required for your work. If she's working for a German organisation and no longer working for the US government, I'm not quite sure why she would still have her US clearance. She's now head of security for German billionaire Otto Düring's Düring Foundation. The foundation seems to be a weird combination of NGO, WikiLeaks and a media organisation. Carrie seems quite happy. The show's emphasising how normal her life is. She's living with her cute German boyfriend, Jonas Happig, the in-house counsel for the Düring Foundation. Some are calling him a redhead. He seems quite blonde to me. Her life is very normal. She takes Franny to daycare on a bike. She has birthday parties for her. They really emphasise the fact that this is the happiest that Carrie's ever been. In contrast, she's on pretty bad terms with Saul and pretty tepid terms with Alison Carr, the current Berlin chief of station who works for Saul. Carrie's not really supposed to know who the station chief is if she's no longer with the CIA, but let's not go there. We're supposed to believe that Carrie and Alison were great friends at some point during their time together in Baghdad, but this is something we've never heard about before and has just been thrown into the mix this season 5. During this episode, we also meet a new character named Laura Sutton, who is an American journalist who's in self-imposed exile in Berlin, working for the Düring Foundation in some sort of capacity. She seems to be a journalist, but as I said, the organisation is a bit strange. I'm not quite sure exactly what it's supposed to be. Meanwhile, Quinn has spent the past 2 years in Syria. I guess the mission in Syria kept getting extended or something, because when Rob approached Quinn at the end of season 4, I didn't get the impression that it was going to be a 2-year gig. Nonetheless, Quinn is in fine form, giving a terse, to-the-point briefing for the bigwigs at Langley.
You said a program should be renewed. I'm asking, is our strategy working?
What strategy? Tell me what the strategy is. I'll tell you if it's working. See, that right there is the problem, because they have a strategy. They're gathering right now in Raqqa by the tens of thousands, hidden in the civilian population, cleaning their weapons, and they know exactly why they're there.
Why is that?
They call it the end times. What do you think the beheadings are about? The crucifixions in Deir Hafer, the revival of slavery. You think they make this shit up? It's all in the book. Their fucking book. The only book they ever read. They read it all the time. They never stop. They're there for one reason and one reason only. To die for the caliphate and usher in a world without infidels. That's their strategy, and it's been that way since the 7th century. So do you really think that a few special forces teams are going to put a dent in that?
Well, what would you do?
You offer me a promotion?
I'm offering you a hypothetical.
$200,000 American troops on the ground indefinitely to provide security and support for an equal number of doctors and elementary school teachers.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Then I better get back there.
What else? What else would make a difference?
Hit reset.
Meaning what?
Meaning pound Raqqa into a parking lot.
The publication Artbeat sums it up quite well when they say, Peter Quinn, played by Rupert Friend, on the other hand, is looking just terrible, whiter and skinnier than ever, and mottled too, his face a strange array of shadows and what appear to be almost healed bruises. I have to say, I also thought he looked rather awful and wondered if the makeup team had done a terrible job with his foundation or something. They can't make it any more clear to me that Quinn's given up his Season 4 path of redemption. He's back in Black Ops, takes out a bomb builder in what appears to be a crowded building, doesn't bat an eyelash when told to take out a female recruiter. Quinn's clearly sunk back into darkness big time. I do notice, though, that everyone's talking about Quinn's blackness, but no one seems to be pointing out that it's Saul who's giving him the names and photos of the people that Quinn's supposed to assassinate. In previous seasons, Saul's been held up as the moral compass of the series, and I remember that he and Virgil, back in Season 2, were both a bit disapproving and aghast when they discovered that Quinn was Black Ops and working for the very evil and nefarious Dara Dal. At the beginning of Season 3, when Saul's ordering the targeted assassinations, they showed him looking quite reluctant or at least troubled by the mission. At the beginning of Season 5, though, it's clear that Saul's very much in cooperation with the devil. He and Dara Dal are working together, and he seems completely fine about ordering targeted kills. He's as much in darkness as Quinn is, although Quinn's the one who actually gets his hands dirty. Only one episode into a new season and Carrie manages to get herself kidnapped before the end of the first episode. I'm not sure why Hezbollah gives a damn about what Carrie Mathison wants, and is not only willing to meet with her just because she asks, but is also willing to extend an invitation of safe passage to her boss just because she asks. The series has always gone out of its way to emphasise Carrie's contacts and sphere of influence and her power importance, but it is a little bit strange and inexplicable to me. I also notice that it's nice of Hezbollah to lock up Carrie's bicycle so that it doesn't get stolen while she's off having her meet and greet with the Hezbollah contact. There was a funny comment on Reddit where someone asked plaintively, "Is it possible for Carrie to have a meeting with an Islamic figure by any means other than abduction?" In terms of how I felt about the episode overall, I thought that it was a good and plausible reintroduction back into the world of Homeland, letting us see what the characters have been doing and where they are in terms of their current morality setting and also what their choices have been. There were a few pretty extreme and malicious moments, however. I find that American television and American movies can't resist the urge to tell rather than show. This is a real shame because in this particular episode, they did do a lot of showing rather than telling, and they did that great, but they still couldn't resist a few moments where, they had some extremely expository snippets that were so expository that I had to roll my eyes.
It's like my old life came back. Everything I moved here to get away from. I don't want to be in that world. I want to be here with you and Franny.
When we were watching the episode, I said to Dan, "Did Carrie say that for the purpose of exposition?" He said, "She said it for the purposes of the trailer." There's another bit in her conversation with Allison that's also extremely expository.
When I left the agency, I thought it was best to make a clean break. Not be one of these people who doesn't seem to understand that when you're out, you're out.
I'm assuming that the episode title, Separation Anxiety, is in part about Carrie's separation anxiety when being apart from her beloved CIA. She says she wanted out. She's very emphatic about not wanting to be in that world anymore. But we know that this is Carrie, and unfortunately, that's her crack. She's like an addict who's out of rehab and clean and knows how to say all of the right things. But we know what she wants and craves deep down. It's not her fault. It's the way the previous seasons have been as well. Every time she gets out and moves on, she gets pulled back in again. In Season 2, she was teaching English classes and recovering after a very traumatic period of her life, and then the agency drags her back in again. At the beginning of Season 3, she's been disavowed by the CIA, but of course she's working a play with Saul to get Javadi, so she's not really out. In Season 4, again, it's a little bit different. She was the drone queen, killing people on a list and very good at it. In a weird way, she's where Quinn is this season, although Carrie saw nothing wrong with what she was doing, and Quinn knows exactly what he is doing and knows that it's wrong, but he doesn't seem to care anymore.
You decide. Put the names in the box, I'll take care of anyone you put there.
As we start season 5, we know full well that the normalcy that we see in episode 1 is going to be very ephemeral in nature, unless Homeland is resetting its entire genre and premise. Of course it's not, it's setting us up for a fall. In terms of the Carrie and Quinn interactions, during the hiatus I deliberately didn't look too deeply at some of the Homeland blogs, but when I did, I would roll my eyes a little because, I'd click on a link and see a comment about, the blogger not being able to see Carrie Quinn as ever having had a romantic relationship, and clearly Carrie had moved on and Carrie Quinn didn't fit anymore, i.e. Carrie Quinn is dead, long live Carrie Jonas. So from the very first episode, it was pretty clear to me that poor Jonas is going to be cactus, as they say here in Australia. Not sure if the guy is going to literally cark it or just exit in a puff of outraged nonplussedness, but an in-house lawyer for a corporate organisation is never going to be able to fully understand Carrie Matheson, not unless he does a lot of homework. I'm actually really surprised that anyone who's been watching the show for any length of time would be fooled by Carrie playing happy families with Jonas. We know that the writers like making Carrie suffer, and giving us a few minutes of Carrie looking happy with Jonas in an episode pretty much dooms the poor guy in terms of long-term prospects of happily ever after with Carrie Matheson. It sounds terrible to say, but I think the writers think that the show works best when Carrie is suffering. I am as aware as everybody else that Homeland is not a romantic drama, but there are a few things that I would like to point out. Although many of the writers were protesting that they were anti-Carrie and Quinn, I suspect that they're all pragmatists and they realise that the Quinn character is hugely popular. I don't want them to go down the fan service route by any means, but I think that they would realise that Homeland works well when it's a truly ensemble piece, and that ensemble includes Quinn as a character. As talented as Claire Danes is, and as compelling as Carrie Matheson is, I think Homeland would probably have died a while back had they not re-energised it with the likes of characters like Peter Quinn. Quinn and Carrie have a chemistry and a dynamic that the writers aren't going to just chuck out without exploring it further, no matter how much they protest that they don't want to go there. They've spent 3 seasons building up this relationship, friendship thing, and now after 2 years of being in different parts of the world, they're both in Berlin at the same time. Even if the promos hadn't told us so, we know that their paths are going to cross again and that they're going to be something important to one another again, even if it's nothing more than working together with sexual tension that continues to be unresolved. Secondly, they've made it clear that Carrie and Quinn act as parallels to one another. They are drawn together, they're repelled by one another. She was the drone queen in season 4, and he was the one seeking redemption. Now he's fallen back into the abyss big time, and Carrie's the one who's desperately in search of redemption, even though she says she's not.
You? What are you atoning for? Keeping America safe?
I'm not atoning.
Turn your back on your entire life.
I'm just trying to do good work.
Well, you're not. You're being naive and stupid. Something you never were before.
If you couple this with Carrie's 2 church visits during 1 episode, the writers couldn't have been any more blatant about telling us that Carrie is attempting to redeem herself this season. It might not be as desperate as Quinn's was in season 4, because Carrie appears to have been able to find a measure of peace and normality, but clearly episode 1 has told us that this is not real and it can't last. In the episode Long Time Coming, Quinn told Carrie, "I want to get out and stay out, but I can't do it on my own. I've learned that." So Quinn couldn't get out. He thought he might be able to have a shot with Carrie. At the beginning of episode 1, Carrie seems to have got out, but we see now that she hasn't. What if she comes to the same realisation as Quinn, that she needs help to get out? I'm not saying that it's going to be from him, but wouldn't it be nice if it was? By the way, my view is that Quinn's back down the rabbit hole, but he's not lost to us forever. His strategy for fighting radical Islamists is 200,000 American troops on the ground indefinitely to provide support for an equal number of American doctors and elementary school teachers. He knows that this is a non-starter, and the realist in him says that the other option is pound Raqqa into a parking lot, but you can see that his preferred option is still one with a strongly humanitarian element in it.